So I watched Dunkirk and I really liked it. I wanted to talk about the film some more, but I didn't really know what way to do it. Doing a spoiler review doesn't really make sense. Doing an explained video doesn't really make sense, because to me it seemed quite obvious, but obviously other people have done those sort of videos already. So instead I'd talk about someone who didn't like the film, and maybe why they didn't like it compared to a film they did like that not a lot of people like. So Jeremy Jahns, YouTube, well, I was going to say movie critic, not really a movie critic, he just likes to kind of review films in a funny, comical way, and I really enjoy Jeremy's videos. I think I wouldn't be doing this if I hadn't watched his videos a couple years ago. And he didn't really like Dunkirk. He didn't like it so much that he didn't even give it a score. I think that's just because his review system doesn't really allow for a film he had these feelings about to have a score, and I might get into another video in the future about some dodgy movie rating systems. But he did also like Suicide Squad, so I want to talk about maybe why he liked Suicide Squad when no one else did, and why he didn't like Dunkirk when a lot of people did. It might have some spoilers in this, so if you haven't watched Dunkirk, watch that, and if you haven't watched Suicide Squad, don't worry about it, don't bother watching that. One of the problems he gets into is that there was no characters that he wanted to root for.
Because the movie doesn't really have characters. It has people in peril. People are in this movie. Characters though? No, not really.
And I think Jeremy probably would have preferred if there was some flashy animated intro sequences. He probably would have preferred if there was some horrific backstory to why these people ended up in this situation. You know, like in Suicide Squad, you've got the fire guy who accidentally murdered his whole family. You've got the lady who's got her husband's soul in a sword. And Will Smith's got a daughter, so it's alright if he's an assassin. And you should really care about him because he's got a daughter. Or do you only care about him because he's got a daughter and the film is telling you should care about him because he's got a daughter, when in fact you actually care about him less because the film is telling you should only care about him because he's got a daughter, and that just seems like a really lazy backstory.
I don't want to do this in front of your daughter.
For me, the closest thing to a main character in Dunkirk, his backstory is this film. You can see at the end of the film, he wakes up from a dream where he's dreamt he's back on the beaches of Dunkirk. He was in this situation for a week, constantly trying to escape this place. He could not get from it. That's like a nightmare you have where you're trying to run away from something and you just can't get away from it. And that was his life for a week. That is his backstory for the rest of his life. And I don't think you really need to root for him because he's got a wife or a daughter at home. He's just a kid who's in a war he didn't want to be in and he's trying to survive. I think that's enough reason to root for someone. And I really don't think it would have made sense in Dunkirk if there was a scene where they all stopped trying to survive for 20 minutes so they could go and sit down in a restaurant when the world was about to be completely destroyed and talk about their backstories.
Water.
That's a good idea, honey.
And kind of coming off the back of that, Jeremy also didn't really like the fact he didn't really know any of the characters' names.
I cannot tell you a name of a person in this movie. I'm pretty sure they address the name.
And I think a lot of the reason for that is because of some of the themes and politics of the film. I don't want to get too into the politics of it, but at a lot of points in the film they do mention Winston Churchill's name. He's probably the name that's said the most. And I think that was kind of one of the points of the film, that you've got these big, important historical figures that sit far away from where this is going on. And they're the names that are remembered, maybe rightly so, but there was 400,000 people left stranded on this beach and nobody knew their names. And I think that's kind of a lot of the idea. And funny enough, I think some of that is in Suicide Squad, where you've got this Amanda Waller character who sits far away and lets these bad guys do these things for her, but then it kind of like backfires because she shows up and starts killing people towards the end of the film. I mean, maybe if Winston Churchill had came down and started killing Nazis, Jeremy might have enjoyed it a bit more. I mean, that probably would have been a different film, but it might have still been enjoyable.
That is just a mean lady.
One of the things Jeremy said is that he found Dunkirk quite boring.
That's my way of saying the movie's pretty boring.
Which is my least favourite word to use to describe a film, alongside the complete opposite, which is interesting, because I don't really think a film is ever boring or interesting. It's boring and interesting because of other reasons, and those are the reasons you should kind of look and get into when you're reviewing a film. And it seemed to me like he didn't really enjoy the action. I think if the characters had to fight some completely faceless ghouls that we didn't really care about and we knew they weren't really in danger of killing the main characters, it would have been a bit more interesting. God damn it, I just said interesting when I said that's a bad word. But for me, one of the most edge of my scenes in this film was where Tom Hardy's flying a plane, trying to line up a shot perfectly so he can take out an enemy plane that is about to bomb a ship full of hundreds of people. And this is in this film, you wouldn't be surprised if that ship got bombed and they all died, because this film shows you right at the start it doesn't care about killing people.
Boring.
And during that scene, I was literally like clenching my fist, begging that Tom Hardy would shoot down this plane.
Boring.
Because there was actually some danger of these people getting killed.
Yeah.
I think Jeremy might have enjoyed it more if there was a clear villain or goal in the film, like a big bad guy who could potentially destroy the world, instead of just the goal being survival, which was something I was really getting behind, and I wanted these characters to survive, but I just don't think he saw that really.
So I can't grab on because I don't know what we're fighting for here. Life, living, yeah, that's easy to say.
And then there was One comment, and this I kind of mentioned earlier, that the film made a lot of sense to me, but some people it clearly didn't. The timeline didn't make any sense.
Then the movie will hop over. It's like, whoa, it was daytime a second ago. Now it's night. Now it's day again.
And this is fair. Maybe he walked in a couple minutes late and he missed the first bit that tells you kind of the timeline of the film, and it doesn't really make sense until the first act. But if you remember what you see on screen, and it's a Christopher Nolan film, so if some text pops up on screen, I'm going to read that, especially when there's not a lot of text. I'm going to read that and remember that for the rest of the film. And basically the text shows up on screen and it tells you the first timeline on the beach is 1 week, and eventually you'll realise the whole film is taking place over that 1 week in this timeline. Then you've got the boat, and that all takes place in 1 day, and then you've got the plane with Tom Hardy in it, and that takes place over 1 hour. I didn't think it was really that confusing. I really enjoyed it. It meant there was no real lulls in the intense moments in the film. They'd jump back from one timeline to the other, and there'd always be something going on. I haven't watched Jeremy's reviews of like Pulp Fiction or Memento or Prestige, but I don't know if he would not enjoy those films because their timelines aren't completely linear. I can't really even compare this to Suicide Squad because that's a film literally where a group of people have to go to a place to do a thing, and there's a couple flashbacks, so it's kind of the most linear, basic storytelling possible.
What, we some kind of Suicide Squad?
So what can we learn for this, apart from the fact that opinions are like assholes, and we already know that saying? And I think it shows that people can enjoy very linear, not overly complicated three-act structure films with normal character progression that kind of makes sense, and we've seen it over and over again. I think Suicide Squad is a poorly done version of those films. Maybe if you look at something like War of the Planet of the Apes, it's not reinventing the wheel, but it's kind of doing a really good version of that wheel, and then you've got Christopher Nolan who's making wheels out of octagons instead, but I really like those wheels. So I like Dunkirk a lot. And that's kind of all I have to say about this. Like I said at the start, I enjoy Jeremy and I watch his videos. I just wanted to talk about Dunkirk some more, and I thought this might be a bit of a different way to talk about the film instead of just a spoiler review or an explained video. So if you enjoyed me doing something a little bit different, please do feel free to leave it a thumbs up. Thank you for watching, and subscribe for more.